Many pianists, myself included some years ago, are tempted to look down upon accompanying as a lesser calling. The supposed hierarchy of respectability looks something like this. First you have piano concertos. No question, this is the top of the world. You get all the glamour and excitement of a full orchestra, and you're the star. Then you have piano recitals. Not quite as glamorous as concertos, but you're still the star. In fact, to make up for the decreased glamour, there's an added cool factor to going solo. You're so chill you don't need anyone's help. You just swagger on stage and go, "I got this, man. I got this." Then you come to chamber music. You're no longer the star here, but usually you're one of a small handful of equals, so that's pretty respectable. The gray area is when there's just two of you, say violin and piano or cello and piano. How respectable this is depends on the repertoire, because there are a lot of violin show pieces with a dinky little piano part like this. And then there are pieces titled Violin Sonata, where the pianist nevertheless has a disproportionately large share of the work. One notorious example in this category is the Violin Sonata by César Franck. Only then does the violinist enter with this. And in any given measure, I might have up to 20 times as many notes as the violinist. So this piece is basically a piano concerto with a violin accompaniment. In fact, I wonder if anyone has ever written a solo piano version of this. Yes, Alfred Cortot wrote a piano transcription of the Franck Violin Sonata. This would be so mean, if you were playing this with a violinist and in the middle of it you just broke off and said, "You know what, I don't need you for this," and jump into the piano transcription. To my violinist friends watching out there, I promise I won't do this to you. But there are plenty of other pieces for two players where the pianist is in a clearly subordinate role. And it's even more pronounced when pianists are accompanying singers, because even then, when you have a pretty involved and intricate piano part, it's the singer who has the words. And that's the ear-catching part for most listeners, even when it's in a language they don't understand. So the temptation for pianists and listeners is to consider these accompanimental parts as not so worthwhile playing and not so worthwhile listening to. There was one pianist, though, who wholeheartedly rejected this notion, who not only specialized in accompanying, but made it his life's work to raise the quality of accompanying and the profile of accompanists in general. His name was Gerald Moore, and he called himself the unashamed accompanist. He avoided any permanent attachment to any specific singer, but he did become the preferred accompanist for many of the greats, including Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, and Victoria de los Angeles. He made countless recordings with them and many other singers, and he wrote several books on accompanying, including this one. He was appointed commander of the Order of the British Empire at some point. If you can't get your hands on a copy of this book, I highly recommend you look for the recording of his talk of the same name, The Unashamed Accompanist. It's here on YouTube, or at least it was earlier this week when I looked for it. Basically, his point is that convincing execution of the accompaniment is crucial in bringing the narrative of a song to life. If you think about it cinematically, the singer is the main actor, and the pianist is the setting, the sky, the sea, mountains, shrubbery, buildings, unnamed characters. In a word, the accompaniment is the universe that the main character inhabits. And bringing that universe to life is a pretty big responsibility. No matter what language a song is in, the pianist has got to know exactly what the story is, down to key words and phrases, in case those key words and phrases need to be underlined by some dramatic cinematic gesture, such as a roll of thunder or the sun bursting out from behind the clouds. The one composer whose works best demonstrate this role of accompaniment is Franz Schubert. Yeah, I know, that's not a song, whatever. Schubert's piano accompaniments are not complicated, but they do a marvelous job of setting the scene. For example, there's this one song, Auf dem Wasser zu singen, I hope I said that right. To sing on the water. The singer is supposedly sitting in a boat contemplating the passage of time. Schubert's accompaniment depicts the water gently lapping against the sides of the boat. Then there's the famous Earl König that depicts the nighttime horseback ride of a father carrying his young son who is seriously ill, while the spirit known as the Earl King keeps calling out to the child, "Come away with me." Schubert depicts the galloping horse and the terror of the moment. Okay, here's a good song, Gretchen at the Spinning Wheel. This is taken from a scene in Goethe's Faust, Part 1, where Gretchen is sitting alone pining for Faust. This is the Bayard-Taylor translation. My peace is gone, my heart is sore, I never shall find it, ah, nevermore. Save I have him near, the grave is here. The world is gall and bitterness all. My poor weak head is racked and crazed, my thought is lost, my sense is mazed. She's going through a lot of adolescent angst here. The piano part is pretty simple. And that, of course, suggests the spinning wheel itself. And that goes on for most of the song, while Gretchen has this melody. If anyone wrote a piano transcription of this one. Yes! Franz Liszt wrote a piano transcription of the Gretchen song. This would be so mean if you were playing this with a singer and in the middle of it you broke off. Okay, I promise my singer friends out there I won't do this to you either. So here are the things the accompanist has to keep in mind when playing this song. First of all, a spinning wheel has a lot of momentum. That means that the music can't slow down or speed up too abruptly. It's tempting to do this in the parts between verses. Or something like that, but that's not how a spinning wheel works. It's got to keep moving. Even if you're going to slow down and speed up a little bit. Later on, Gretchen starts daydreaming about Faust, and she sings, "His lofty gait, his noble size, the smile of his mouth, the power of his eyes." When she gets to that point, the piano part has got to drop to a hush and be more dreamlike. And then as she keeps thinking about him, she gets more and more agitated, and the pianist has got to ramp up the tempo and volume accordingly. She sings, "And the magic flow of his talk, the bliss in the clasp of his hand, and ah, his kiss." That moment is when she sings, "Ah, his kiss." And then there's a pause in the music, as if she had forgotten what she was doing. She got so worked up, she didn't realize that the spinning wheel had in fact stopped. Cinematically, this is as if the camera zoomed in on her, and then she blinks awake, and then you see the whole room again and everything is still. And then she's got to get the wheel going again. Finally, after a few more agitated verses, the song winds down and the wheel comes slowly to a halt. There's something rather quaint nowadays about an angsty teenager singing her heart out at a spinning wheel. What would be the modern equivalent to Gretchen with a fidget spinner? Or maybe she'd just pull out her smartphone and start looking on Facebook. How would you depict this in music anyway? Gretchen scrolling through Facebook. Someone should write that song. Anyway, it may seem a bit unfair of me to pick Schubert as an example because his accompaniments are so good. But even in songs where all the pianist gets is this. I'm just making this up, but if, say, this was the accompaniment to a humorous song, then the song becomes much more effective if the piano part is given some humor and playfulness. This, of course, depends on where the punchlines are in the lyrics. There's one other skill that an accompanist needs in his or her toolkit: transposition. Sometimes pianists like to show off by playing pieces in arbitrary keys. Take that up a minor third. I think some of that is going to be easier in this key than the original. But anyway, if you are accompanying singers, then being able to transpose music between keys becomes a practical necessity. You see, sometimes individual notes are going to be uncomfortably high or uncomfortably low for a specific singer's vocal range, and he or she will want to sing it in a different key. Now for singers, transposing is easy. You just start on a different note and everything follows. But for pianists, it takes a bit more thought and coordination just because of the way the white and black keys are laid out. And a singer may decide in the middle of rehearsal, no, I don't like this in D minor. Let's do it in C sharp. No, B flat. All right, B minor. And you have to be ready. Of course, we'll probably need some time to practice in the new key before we can give a polished performance. But in rehearsal, we have to at least be able to approximate our part in other keys on demand. So that's what it's like being an accompanist. It's an extremely important and entirely honorable role to play. And for those of you who are pianists, even if you'd rather be playing solo, working with singers teaches you a lot about musical sensitivity, partly because every piece in the repertoire has a clearly defined story that helps you focus your interpretive efforts, and partly because singers themselves are pretty sensitive musicians for physiological reasons. They are their own instrument. Accompanying also forces you to play quietly. Playing soft is a lot harder than playing loud. I have lost count of how many times I've been told to hush up, and even Gerald Moore wrote a memoir titled, "Am I Too Loud?" If you can play as quietly as accompanying requires, that's going to tremendously broaden your dynamic range for solo repertoire. There is one other category of accompanying that I didn't mention, which is even lower in the supposed hierarchy of respectability. And that's accompanying in any context where the pianist won't ever be part of a normal performance. I'm thinking of rehearsal accompaniment for opera or musical theater, where the accompanist is just filling in for the pit orchestra until they show up. Well, I'm going to save this topic for another time, but I promise you, no matter how respectable it is, doing this kind of accompaniment is tremendous fun.